Recently on the channel, we took a look at the new Minisforum 790S7. This is a small form factor gaming PC that really puts down some amazing performance. And over on their website, they do offer two different CPU variants. You can go with the Ryzen 9 7940HX or the Intel Core i9 12900K. And with all of this, you can get it with an RTX 4060. But they also sell this as a bare bones unit over on their website. And in this video, we're going to be adding an Intel ARC A380 to see if it would be worth putting something like this together. Now, the Intel ARC A380 is coming in much cheaper than the RTX 4060, so you can save a lot of money. Over on Amazon right now, the low-profile RTX 4060 is actually $319, but the ARC A380 from ASRock or Sparkle is around $119. In this video, we're going to put everything together, and I also want to go over some tweaking that we can do with that A380 to get better performance out of it. But before we get started here, I do want to mention that this video is sponsored by Vip-Urcdkey. I've been using this site for a long time. They offer Steam keys, Uplay, Ubisoft, but the main thing I usually pick up over here are Windows 10 Pro OEM keys. And right now, if you use code ETA, you can get 25% off, bringing the price down to $17 for that key. And keep in mind, this will also work with Microsoft Office products. We'll use code ETA. As you can see, brought it down to that $17 price mark. Personally, I use PayPal just to have that security, so we'll go ahead and check out. They're going to email that code to you. And now we can use that code to activate Windows 10 Pro. I'm going to head over to my updates and security. We're going to go to activation. As you can see, I've got Windows 10 Pro, but it's not activated. So I'm going to change product key. I'm going to paste it in here, choose next, choose activate, and Windows is now activated. We're ready to go. They'll email your code once your payment is processed, and that's basically it. If you're interested in picking up cheap Windows 10 keys for your new PC builds, I'll leave a link in the description. So like I mentioned, you can pick this up bare bones or with the RTX 4060. Now this is definitely the way to go with that 4060. It's going to give you the best performance, but if you're looking to save that extra $200 and only really need to game at 1080, the ARC A380 is a great choice. This is the Sparkle version, and as you can see, it's a low-profile card. It's got 6 GB of VRAM, it is GDDR6, and you could go with the ASRock low-profile, but I've got the Sparkle here, and I did pick this one up a few months ago on Newegg when they were on sale for $99. Even if you're buying this Minisforum Mini PC bare bones, it's still going to come with that 400-watt power supply, and it does have an 8-pin power connector for something like that RTX 4060. But with the A380, we don't need any extra power. It's going to draw everything from that PCIe slot. And this card's going to slot right down in there. It's going to fit in here really nicely. Now, there are a few things that I like to do with software, but the first thing I wanted to show you here was in the BIOS because it's really important with these ARC GPUs. So first things first, with these ARC graphics cards, we definitely want to make sure that resizable bar is enabled from the BIOS. On this Minisforum Mini PC, we can head right into the BIOS. While it's booting up, hit delete on your keyboard a few times. It'll bring you into the BIOS, and this is their visual BIOS. So we'll go to Setup. From here, we want to go to Advanced, scroll down to Onboard Device Settings, and Resizable Bar needs to be enabled. This was already enabled, but just to be safe, make sure you check this out. I'm going to go ahead and save, and then we'll get into Windows. Okay, getting right in here with Windows. As you can see, we've got that 7940HX, 16 cores. I mean, we've got more than enough CPU performance here. 32 gigs of DDR5. And of course, we're going to be using that Intel ARC A380. So there are a few things that I like to do to this, and you can always go through with Intel ARC control panel here. But with the low profile, from our performance mode, we can only go up to around 43 watts. So personally, I like using the Predator Bifrost software. As you can see, we're up to 66. From the drop down here, you can create your own profile, but I want to show you real quick. This was meant for Acer's Predator A770, but it does work with basically all ARC cards that I've been able to, get up and running in a desktop. It does detect it as the A380. If we go to turbo mode, just a preset mode, 235 watts. Now it's never going to do that. So if I go back over to the profile that I've created here, we'll actually create a new one. Create new profile, and we can name it whatever we want. I'll just go with 380, create, showing 210, but this GPU just isn't going to do that kind of wattage. Basically, when I move this, it's going to go to 66, and we're still not going to be hitting 66 watts with it. We're going to be around 45 up to 50 every once in a while. That's just how it is with the low profile version because we're pulling all of the power from that PCIe slot. It doesn't need any extra power connectors, but this will allow us to go higher than the Intel ARC Control Center will let us. So this is personally what I like setting it up as. Fan speed can also be adjusted. I'll have Afterburner up and running so we can see exactly what this thing is doing. It will clock higher given that we've got a higher power limit. With that fan, I usually leave it on auto, save and apply. So now we can get the maximum performance out of this low profile A380. And doing this isn't magically going to turn that A380 into an RTX 4070, but in some cases it can bring us from under 60 FPS to over with high settings at 1080. And to give you an idea, I did run the Geekbench 6 OpenCL benchmark, stock wattage 40,000, and with that modified wattage, we gained around 4,000 points here. So we are getting a little uplift in performance across the board. I also ran a couple other benchmarks with that modified wattage. So when it comes to 3D Mark Night Raid, we're up there at 40,162. And I also ran Time Spy. I was actually expecting to get more out of it than we're seeing here. But these are all synthetic benchmarks, and now I want to show you what this thing can really do. It's actually not a bad card given the price point here. And when we compare this to something like the RX 6400, which is an AMD card that I personally like, low profile, they also make that single slot version. This has 6 gigs of VRAM versus 4, and that can make a world of difference with newer games. But the first one we have here is Spider-Man Remastered, 1080p, high settings with IGTI scaling set to balanced. You could go with FSR or you could use XeSS if you want to. We don't need frame generation here because we're well over that 60 mark, and the game does play really nicely on this ARC A380. Next up, we've got Red Dead 2 1080 medium settings with FSR set to balance. And if you take a look in the top left-hand corner, you can see that our GPU power is right there at around 46 watts. And that's kind of what we're seeing by enabling everything in that Bifrost software. And when it comes to GPU clocks, you can see we're close to 2600 megahertz. Over on Intel's website and even the Sparkle or the ASRock website with this low profile, it states that it has a maximum clock up to 2000. But since it's pulling a little more wattage, it can clock on up. Esports games like Dota, Fortnite, and even Overwatch 2 are going to run pretty nicely here. We're at 1080 high, 100% resolution scale. You can see we're over 100 FPS. I also tested out Warframe, and we can hit 120 Hertz consistently at high settings 1080. I also ran the built-in benchmark for Shadow of the Tomb Raider. We're at 1080 medium settings, getting an average of 81 FPS. Doom Eternal is just one of those really well optimized games. I had good luck on this with basically everything that I test it with depending on the settings, and right now we're at 1080 high. I've got the built-in stats up in the top right-hand corner. You can see we're not using any kind of scaling or anything like that, and it's just running really well. Another one I was pretty interested in testing out was Black Myth Wukong, and originally I went into this with no frame gen. We got an average of 43 low settings 1080p, but turning frame gen on allows us to get that average of 78. And with this, I'm not using FSR or even XeSS, I'm using the built-in TSR scaler. And the final one we have here is Cyberpunk 2077. I was really hoping that we could run this at 1080 high or even ultra settings. With FSR 3 frame gen, it's totally possible to run it over that mark, but my settings here are 1080 medium with XeSS set to balanced, and I'm seeing an average of around 70 FPS. So overall, performance here with the ARC 380 really isn't that bad at 1080p, but if you've got the extra cash, I would highly recommend using something like that RTX 4060. But if you're looking to save that extra $200 or even put that into some more Steam games, then you could get by at 1080 with the ARC A380. Not the most powerful low-profile GPU on the market, but paired up in a small form factor case like this, knowing what you're getting into, it actually makes a really nice little setup. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you're interested in seeing this thing with that RTX 4060, I'll leave a link for that video down below. And if you want to learn a little more about this new Minisforum mini PC, I'll also leave links to their official website. If you've got any questions or you want to see anything else running on this unit, just let me know in the comments. And like always, thanks for watching.